My hands are 75 years old, marked by liver spots and thin skin that bruises too easily. His are 28, smooth and sure. And last Tuesday, in the middle of an autumn storm, they reached across the distance between us and changed everything. I don't know what possessed me to wait at that bus stop for 40 minutes. Pride, maybe. Or that particular brand of stubbornness that comes with age. The refusal to admit that you can't handle a little rain. That you should have called your daughter. That you're not as capable as you once were. The water had soaked through my coat. My shopping bag hung heavy and useless in my grip, and I could feel my hair plastered against my forehead in a way that must have made me look ancient and pitiful. When the car pulled up, some compact thing in dark blue, music playing softly inside. I didn't even look. You learn, at my age, to be invisible to young people in their cars. They don't see you. You're part of the landscape, like fire hydrants or mailboxes. But then the window rolled down. "Excuse me." The voice was young, uncertain, male. "I'm sorry to bother you, but would you like a ride? I can't just... you've been standing here a while in the rain." I turned. He was wearing a baseball cap, slightly crooked, and his face had that soft quality that very young men have before life hardens them. Something in his eyes was so earnest, so genuinely concerned, that I felt my automatic defenses. Stranger danger, don't get in cars. What would people think? Begin to waver. I don't want to impose, I heard myself say, which is what you say when you're cold and wet and desperately want to say yes. You're not. Please. I'd feel terrible leaving you here. There was no calculation in his voice, no agenda I could detect. Just simple human kindness, the kind that's become rare enough to feel almost shocking. I looked down the empty street, no bus in sight, and made a decision that would unravel everything I thought I knew about the shape my life would take. The car was warm. Blessedly, wonderfully warm. I settled into the passenger seat with less grace than I'd have liked, my wet coat squeaking against the upholstery, and fumbled with the seatbelt until he gently reached over and clicked it into place. "I'm Lucas," he said, pulling back into traffic with careful attention. "And before you worry, I promise I'm not a serial killer or anything. Though I guess that's exactly what a serial killer would say." I surprised myself by laughing. "I'm Eleanor, and I'll take my chances." The radio played something instrumental, piano mostly, turned down low enough that it felt like atmosphere rather than intrusion. He didn't pepper me with questions or fill the silence with nervous chatter. We just drove, the windshield wipers keeping steady rhythm, the city lights blurring past in the rain. "This weather," I finally said, more to break the quiet than anything. "It gets into your bones, at my age. My grandmother used to say the same thing. She'd make this tea, ginger and honey and something else I could never figure out. Said it drove the cold out from the inside. Smart woman. She was." His voice softened. "She passed 3 years ago. You remind me of her a little. Not in looks, just, I don't know, something." I didn't know what to say to that, so I looked out the window instead. We were passing the bakery where I used to buy Paul's favorite rye bread, back when there was someone to buy bread for. The flower shop where he'd get me roses on Fridays, before the arthritis got too bad for him to walk that far. The whole neighborhood was full of ghosts like that. Not frightening ones, just shadows of the life I'd lived. "Where are you headed?" Lucas asked. I gave him my address, the little house on Maple Street that had been home for 43 years, that felt increasingly like a museum, to a marriage that ended when Paul's heart did. "Oh, that's near my mother's place." I'm actually heading that direction anyway. We talked then. Small things, safe things, the price of groceries. When did milk get so expensive? The smell of rain on pavement. He was studying architecture, he said, and was obsessed with how weather changed the character of buildings. I told him about the garden I used to keep, before my knees made kneeling impossible. 20 minutes. That's all it was. 20 minutes of ordinary conversation between two strangers being kind to each other on a rainy afternoon. But when he pulled up in front of my house and I gathered my soggy shopping bag, I realized I was smiling. Not the polite, automatic smile you give cashiers and neighbors. A real one. The kind that comes from somewhere genuine inside you. "Thank you," I said, meaning it more than the words could carry. "You probably saved me from pneumonia." "Anytime." He smiled back, and there were dimples. Of course there were dimples. "Stay dry, Eleanor." I watched him drive away, his taillights disappearing around the corner, and felt something I hadn't felt in 12 years. Not desire, nothing so simple or inappropriate. Just noticed, seen. Like I was still a person capable of mattering to someone, even a stranger, even for 20 minutes. I unlocked my door and stepped into the silence of my house, dripping water onto the mat, and thought, that was nice. That was really nice. I had no idea it was just the beginning. That night, lying in bed with the rain still drumming against the windows, I found myself thinking about dimples and baseball caps, and the casual kindness of young men who stop for old women at bus stops. I told myself I was being silly, sentimental, that it was just gratitude mixing with loneliness in the particular way that happens when you're 75 and haven't had a real conversation with anyone under 50 in months. But as I drifted off to sleep, I was still smiling, and that, I would learn, was already more dangerous than I could have imagined. He appeared at my door 4 days later, holding an umbrella I didn't recognize. I'd been sorting through Paul's old books, a task I'd been putting off for 3 years because it felt like erasing him page by page. When the doorbell rang, I wasn't expecting anyone. My daughter calls on Sundays, my son on Wednesdays, and neither of them ever just shows up. So the sound startled me, made me suddenly aware of my cardigan with the missing button and my hair that I hadn't bothered to properly comb. Through the peephole, the baseball cap, my heart did something foolish. "Lucas?" I opened the door part way, confused and oddly pleased. "Is everything all right?" He held up the umbrella, black, simple, the kind you buy at drugstores. "I found this in my back seat. I think you left it when I drove you home. I hadn't brought an umbrella that day." I'd been caught in the rain precisely because I'd forgotten to take one. But something in his eyes, a slight nervousness, a hopefulness, made me understand that this was a kindness disguised as forgetfulness, an excuse, a bridge. "Oh," I said softly. "Thank you. That was thoughtful of you to bring it back." We stood there for a moment, him on my porch with the umbrella extended toward me, me in the doorway feeling absurdly uncertain. The afternoon light caught his face differently than the car's interior had. He looked even younger, barely more than a boy, really. What was he doing on an old woman's porch on a Thursday afternoon? "Would you like to come in for coffee?" The words were out before I could question them. "It's the least I can do. You've driven all this way." The smile. Those damn dimples again. "I'd like that, if you're sure I'm not intruding." "Don't be silly. I've got a whole pot going to waste. I always make too much. Habit from when there were more people to drink it." I stepped back and let him in, suddenly hyper-aware of every scuff mark on the floor, every piece of outdated furniture, every sign that this house existed in a different era. But Lucas didn't seem to notice or care. He took off his shoes without being asked. His mother raised him right and followed me to the kitchen. Cream? Sugar? Both, please. My mom says I drink dessert instead of coffee. I smiled, preparing his cup the way he liked it, preparing mine black the way I'd drunk it for 50 years. We settled at the kitchen table, the same table where Paul and I had eaten breakfast every morning, where we'd helped our children with homework, where I'd sat alone for 12 years counting the silence. So, Lucas said, wrapping his hands around the mug. How have you been? Did you catch a cold from that rain? No. Tough as old leather, me. I sipped my coffee. What about you? How's the architecture going? And just like that, we slipped into conversation as easily as if we'd known each other for years instead of days. He told me about a project he was working on. Something about sustainable housing using reclaimed materials. His eyes lit up when he talked about it, hands moving to illustrate concepts I only partially understood but found fascinating anyway. I found myself telling him about Paul, about how we'd designed this kitchen together back in 1979, about the argument we'd had over whether the cabinets should be oak or maple. Oak won, I said. It always does when you're married to a stubborn German man. You must miss him. The statement was simple, direct, without the usual uncomfortable pity people layer onto such observations. I appreciated that. Every day, but differently now. At first, it was like missing a limb. You reach for something and it's not there, and you can't believe it. Now it's more like background music, always playing, but you learn to live your life with it. Lucas nodded slowly. My dad left when I was 5. I used to wait by the window every day thinking he'd come back. Eventually you stop waiting, but you never stop wondering what it would have been like. 2 hours passed, then 3. We talked about his mother who worked 2 jobs to put him through school, about my daughter who calls me every Sunday at exactly 3 o'clock as if it's a chore on her calendar, about how cities change and people change and somehow you wake up one day feeling like a stranger in your own life. He noticed my bookshelf, Paul's books I'd been sorting. Hemingway. My grandmother loved Hemingway. The grandmother who made the tea? The very same. She used to read to me. The Old Man and the Sea. I didn't understand it then, but I think I'm starting to. Before I knew it, the afternoon had dissolved into evening. The kitchen windows showed darkness outside, and I realized with a start that I'd let this young man sit in my kitchen for hours, that we'd gone through 2 pots of coffee, and I'd opened a box of cookies I'd been saving for no particular reason. Oh my goodness, I've kept you? I said, standing abruptly. You must have things to do, people to see. Lucas stood too, but slowly, reluctantly. This was really nice, Eleanor. I can't remember the last time I had a conversation like this. Everyone my age is always rushing, always on their phones. Well, I felt warmth spreading through my chest, dangerous and lovely. The coffee pot is always on, if you're ever in the neighborhood. Yeah. His face brightened. I'd like that. I'd really like that. I walked him to the door, watched him put his shoes back on, felt the evening air drift in when he opened it. Thank you for the umbrella, I said, even though I'm pretty sure it was never mine to begin with. He had the grace to look sheepish. It was worth a shot. After he left, I stood in my hallway for a long moment, the umbrella in my hand, my reflection barely visible in the darkened window. I looked like what I was, an old woman in a cardigan with a missing button, gray hair that needed a proper styling, liver spots on her hands. But I felt like something else entirely. I felt like possibility. And that night, for the first time in 12 years, I laid out a nice outfit for the next day. Just in case the doorbell rang again, and the boy with the dimples and the kind eyes was standing on the other side, inventing another excuse to see me. I was 75 years old. I knew better than to let myself hope for such things. But I hoped anyway. He came back on Saturday with a toolbox. I'd just mentioned in passing during one of our conversations, that the kitchen faucet had been dripping for months, that I kept meaning to call a plumber, but the quotes were astronomical, and it seemed silly to spend that much money on a drip when I could just put a bowl underneath. Lucas rang the doorbell at 9 in the morning, earlier than I'd expected anyone, earlier than decent for a young person on a weekend. I answered in my robe, mortified, but he just grinned and held up the toolbox like a prize. "I'm here to fix your faucet, if that's okay." It wasn't okay. It was intrusive and presumptuous and far too kind. But I let him in anyway because somewhere in the past 2 weeks, I'd stopped knowing how to say no to him. He worked while I made breakfast, scrambled eggs and toast, the simple things I knew how to make without thinking. I watched him from the corner of my eye as I cooked, watched the way he moved with quiet competence, tongue between his teeth in concentration. He'd brought his own tools. He'd looked up my specific faucet model online. He'd driven across town on a Saturday morning to fix a problem that wasn't his to solve. "Why are you doing this?" I asked, setting a plate beside him as he worked under the sink. He paused, wrench in hand, and looked up at me from the floor. "Because you needed it fixed, and because I like spending time with you." Such simple words, such devastating honesty. "Lucas, I'm 75 years old. You should be out with people your own age, doing whatever young people do on Saturdays." "Maybe I don't want to do whatever young people do on Saturdays." He returned to the faucet. "Most of my friends just want to get drunk and complain about their jobs. You actually listen. You ask questions. You make me feel like what I'm saying matters." I sat down at the table, my eggs growing cold. "Your mother raised you to be kind to old ladies. That's what this is." "My mother raised me to recognize when something's good for me." He tightened something, tested it, nodded with satisfaction. "And you're good for me, Eleanor. You make me slow down, think about things differently, see the world through eyes that have actually lived in it." The faucet stopped dripping. Perfect silence, where there'd been that maddening plink, plink, plink for months. He cleaned up his tools and joined me at the table, accepting the plate I'd made for him. We ate together, the morning light streaming through the window, and I felt something dangerous settling into my chest. Comfort, familiarity, the terrible pleasure of routine. He started coming by regularly after that, Tuesdays and Saturdays like clockwork, sometimes with excuses. He'd bought too many apples at the market, did I want some? He was in the neighborhood anyway. He found this book I might like, but mostly, he stopped pretending. He just came, and I stopped pretending I wasn't waiting for him. We'd sit in the living room and he'd tell me about his week. The demanding professor, the group project falling apart, the girl at the coffee shop who kept asking for his number. I'd tell him about mine. The book club where I was the youngest member at 75. The doctor's appointment where they found nothing wrong. But I felt wrong anyway. The way my son had called on Wednesday, but spent the whole conversation checking his email. "He doesn't mean to be distant," I'd said. "He's busy. Important job. Family of his own." "Being busy isn't the same as being present," Lucas had replied. and I'd felt seen in a way that made my throat tight. He fixed other things too. The loose railing on the porch, the stuck window in the guest room, the lamp that flickered. I started keeping a list, absurd as it was, because each repair meant another visit, another reason for him to stay. One evening, after he'd spent 3 hours helping me sort through old photographs, laughing at my hairstyles from the 70s, asking gentle questions about Paul, about my children when they were small, he gathered the albums and looked at me with something I couldn't quite name in his eyes. "Can I ask you something?" "Of course. Do you ever feel lonely?" I could have lied, should have lied. Instead, I told him the truth. Every single day, even when I'm with other people, especially when I'm with other people who are supposed to know me. He nodded slowly. "Me too. That's why I keep coming back here. Because when I'm with you, I don't feel lonely. I feel found." I didn't sleep well that night. I kept replaying his words, the way he'd looked at me when he said them. I told myself I was being ridiculous, that he was young and searching, and I happened to be convenient, that this was charity or curiosity or some kind of project for him. But when I looked in the mirror the next morning, putting on lipstick for the first time in years, I knew I was lying to myself. I was 75 years old, and I was falling for a boy, young enough to be my grandson. And the most terrifying part? I think he was falling too. I started lying to myself in small ways first. When I bought new curtains for the living room, cream-colored, softer than the heavy drapes that had hung there for decades, I told myself it was time for a change anyway. When I started setting my hair with the old rollers I'd abandoned years ago, I told myself I was simply taking better care of my appearance. When I caught myself checking the clock on Tuesday afternoons, heart quickening at the sound of every car passing outside, I told myself I was just looking forward to pleasant company. But the truth has a way of ambushing you in quiet moments. It was a Thursday evening, one of his unscheduled visits. He'd texted. Yes, we texted now, something that had started casually and become constant, saying he had leftover Chinese food from lunch and asking if I'd eaten. 20 minutes later, he was at my door with containers of lo mein and spring rolls, and we were eating straight from the boxes at my kitchen table like college students. "My mother would be horrified," I said, gesturing at the informal setup. "She believed in proper plates for every meal, even cereal." "My mother eats cereal over the sink when she's running late for work," Lucas laughed. "I think she'd approve of efficiency." We talked about mothers then, about the women who raised us with their own particular forms of love and worry. His mother who worked herself to exhaustion to give him opportunities. My mother who'd taught me that a woman's value was in her silence and service. Lessons I'd spent a lifetime half believing, half resenting. "Do you think she'd like me?" Lucas asked suddenly. "Your mother, if she were still here." The question caught me off guard. I don't know. She had very specific ideas about propriety, about what was appropriate. And this isn't appropriate. It wasn't a question. I set down my chopsticks, the food suddenly tasteless. "Lucas, what are we doing?" He met my eyes, and there was something raw in his expression that made my breath catch. I don't know what to call it, but I know I think about you constantly. I know Tuesday and Saturday aren't enough. I know when something good happens. You're the first person I want to tell, and I know that scares you. "Of course it scares me." My voice came out shakier than I intended. "You're 28. I'm 75. People will think. I don't care what people think. You should. I should." I stood, needing distance, needing air. It's not right, Lucas. You should be with someone your own age. Someone who can give you a future, children, all the things you deserve. He stood too, moving closer, and I could smell his cologne. Something fresh and young that reminded me I was neither of those things. What if I don't want those things? What if what I want is this? You? You don't know what you want. You're too young to. I'm not a child, Eleanor. There was an edge to his voice now, frustration breaking through his usual gentleness. I'm 28 years old. I've had relationships. I've been in love before. And this, what I feel when I'm with you. It's different. It's real. It's the most real thing in my life right now. I wanted to believe him. God, how I wanted to believe him. But I'd lived too long, seen too much, been disappointed too many times. What happens when the novelty wears off? I asked quietly. When you realize I'm just a lonely old woman who can't keep up with you. When your friends start asking questions. When you meet someone appropriate and realize what you've been wasting your time on. Stop! He reached for my hand, and I let him take it, let his young fingers intertwine with my old ones. Stop calling yourself old like it's an insult. Stop assuming I'm going to leave. Stop punishing us both for something that hasn't happened. I looked down at our joined hands. The contrast, almost obscene. His smooth skin against my paper-thin, age-spotted flesh. I'm afraid, I whispered. I'm so afraid of what this means. I know. I'm afraid too. He lifted my hand to his lips, kissed my knuckles so tenderly I felt tears prick my eyes. But I'd rather be afraid with you than safe without you. We stood like that for a long moment, the Chinese food growing cold on the table, the evening settling around us. Then, very slowly, he pulled me into an embrace. I haven't been held like that since Paul died. Really held. Like I was something precious and necessary. Lucas's arms were strong around me, his heartbeat steady against my ear, and I felt myself beginning to crack open, all the loneliness and longing and secret hopes I'd locked away spilling out. I don't know how to do this, I said into his chest. Neither do I. But maybe we can figure it out together. When he left that night, he kissed my forehead at the door. Just a gentle press of lips against skin. Nothing scandalous or inappropriate. But it felt like a promise, like a beginning. I stood at the window and watched him drive away, touching the spot where he'd kissed me, feeling like a foolish teenager and a terrified old woman all at once. The next morning, my daughter called. Her regular Sunday call, precisely at 3 o'clock. "How are you, Mom?" "Good," I said. And for the first time in years, it wasn't a lie. "I'm actually really good." I could hear the surprise in her voice. "Oh, that's wonderful. What's changed?" I almost told her. Almost said, "I've met someone. He's young and kind and makes me feel alive again." But the words stuck in my throat, replaced by nothing really. Just trying to enjoy things more. After we hung up, I sat with my secret, holding it close like something fragile and forbidden. Because that's what this was, wasn't it? Forbidden. Impossible. Wrong in all the ways society had taught me to recognize wrongness. But it didn't feel wrong. It felt like the first right thing that had happened to me in 12 long years. And that terrified me most of all. The end of pretending came on a Tuesday afternoon in the produce section of the grocery store. I was examining tomatoes, a mundane task I'd performed thousands of times, when I heard my name called in that particular tone of forced cheerfulness that means someone is about to make small talk they don't actually want to have. "Eleanor, I thought that was you." Margaret Chen, from my book club. 78, sharp as a tack, and blessed with the kind of observational skills that would have made her an excellent detective or a terrible secret keeper. She was pushing her cart toward me with purpose, her eyes already cataloging everything about my appearance. The nicer blouse I'd chosen that morning, the lipstick I'd started wearing again, the fact that I'd actually styled my hair. "Margaret, how lovely to see you." "You look wonderful, dear. Positively glowing. Are you using a new face cream?" I laughed, but it came out nervous. "No, just trying to take better care of myself." "Well, it shows. You missed last month's book club meeting. We were worried." "I'm sorry about that." Something came up. Lucas had come up. We'd sat on my porch until midnight talking about his mother's birthday, about how he wanted to do something special for her but didn't know what. I'd helped him plan an entire day, suggestions drawn from 5 decades of being a mother myself. The book club had completely slipped my mind. Margaret was still talking, something about the next selection, when her gaze shifted past my shoulder and her expression changed, became knowing, almost amused. "Is that young man trying to get your attention?" I turned. Lucas was 3 aisles over, holding up a pineapple with a questioning expression, clearly asking if we needed one. He'd insisted on driving me to the store, said he needed groceries anyway, suggested we shop together. I'd agreed because I'd stopped being able to say no to time with him. "Oh," I said, my voice sounding strange to my own ears. That's Lucas, a friend's son. He's been helping me with some repairs around the house." The lie tasted bitter. But what was the truth? That's the man I'm falling in love with, Margaret. Yes, he's 50 years younger than me. No, I don't know what I'm doing. Yes, I'm aware it's insane. How kind of him. Margaret's tone was perfectly neutral, which somehow made it worse. "It's good to have help at our age, though he seems very attentive for just a handyman." Lucas had started walking toward us, oblivious to the minefield he was entering. I felt panic rising in my chest. "Eleanor, they don't have the coffee you like, but they have..." He stopped when he saw Margaret, recovered smoothly. "Oh, I'm sorry. I didn't mean to interrupt. Not at all." Margaret extended her hand. "I'm Margaret Chen, a friend of Eleanor's from book club." "Lucas Rivera. Nice to meet you." He shook her hand, then turned to me with those eyes that gave everything away. "Should I grab regular coffee instead? Or we could try that other brand you mentioned?" We. He'd said we, as if we were a unit, a couple, a thing that made decisions together about coffee. Margaret heard it too. I could see the calculations happening behind her sharp eyes. "Well," she said too brightly, "I'll let you two finish your shopping. Eleanor, we'll see you at next month's meeting." "Yes, of course. I wouldn't miss it." She walked away, but I could feel her glance back at us. Could imagine the phone calls she'd make as soon as she got home. You'll never believe who I saw Eleanor with at the store. "Everything okay?" Lucas asked, concerned. "You look pale." "I'm fine. Let's finish and go." We completed the shopping in near silence. Lucas tried to make conversation, but I gave him short answers, distracted by the weight of Margaret's knowing look. In the car, he finally confronted it. "Did I do something wrong?" "No, yes, I don't know." I stared out the window. "You said we about the coffee? You said it like we're together. Aren't we?" The question hung in the air between us, impossible to answer honestly, without acknowledging what we'd both been avoiding naming. "Lucas, people will talk. Margaret will talk. By tomorrow, everyone in my book club will know that I was shopping with a man young enough to be my grandson, and they'll have theories, and none of those theories will be kind." So what? His hands tightened on the steering wheel. Let them talk. Who cares what they think? I care. The words came out sharper than I intended. I have to live in this community. These are my friends, my neighbors. I can't be the subject of gossip and pity and judgment. Is that what you think this is? Something to be ashamed of? I think this is complicated. I think you don't understand what it's like to be my age and have people look at you like you're either senile or desperate, or both. We'd reached my house. Lucas pulled into the driveway but didn't turn off the engine. His jaw was tight, and I could see hurt flickering across his face. I understand more than you think, he said quietly. I understand that you're letting other people's opinions matter more than what we actually feel. I understand that you're scared. But Eleanor, I'm scared too. I'm terrified that one day you're going to decide I'm not worth the trouble, that the age difference is too much, that you'd rather be alone than deal with what people might say. Maybe that would be easier. The words came out before I could stop them. I watched them land, watched Lucas flinch as if I'd struck him. Is that what you want? For this to be easier? I wanted to say yes. Wanted to end it before it got worse, before we got deeper, before the inevitable heartbreak. But when I opened my mouth, what came out was, no. God help me, no. He reached across the console and took my hand. Then stop running. Stop apologizing for feeling something. Stop letting other people tell you what your life should look like. I don't know if I'm brave enough. You are. You're the bravest person I know. We sat like that in my driveway, holding hands, the groceries growing warm in the back seat. Eventually, I pulled away. I need time to think. Okay. His voice was steady, but I could hear the fear underneath. How much time? I don't know. A few days. A week, maybe. A week. He nodded slowly. And what happens after that? I honestly don't know, Lucas. I wish I did. I gathered my groceries and went inside, leaving him in the driveway. I didn't watch him leave. Couldn't bear to. That night, Margaret called. I let it go to voicemail. She called again the next morning, and the morning after that. My daughter called too. Unusual on a Thursday. Mom, Margaret Chen's daughter called me. She's worried about you. Said you were with some young man at the grocery store and seemed upset. Is everything all right? Are you being taken advantage of? I'm fine, I lied. It's nothing. But it wasn't nothing. It was everything. And I was standing on a cliff edge trying to decide whether to jump or retreat to safety. The week I asked for felt like a prison sentence. Tuesday came and went. No knock at the door. No text message about leftovers or broken things that needed fixing. Just silence. And the terrible awareness of how much space Lucas had occupied in my life without me fully realizing it. I tried to fill the emptiness with routine. I went to the library and checked out books I didn't read. I baked bread I didn't eat. I organized closets that didn't need organizing. Anything to avoid sitting still with my thoughts. Wednesday evening, my son called. Not his usual scheduled time. Mom, I got a weird call from Aunt Susan. She heard from someone that you're seeing someone? My sister-in-law, of course. Margaret must have spread the word efficiently. The gossip network was faster than any internet. I have a friend who's been helping around the house, I said carefully. A male friend. Yes. Mom. His voice took on that tone. The one that meant he was about to parent me the way I used to parent him. You need to be careful. There are people who prey on older women. Romance scams, financial exploitation. It's not like that. How old is this person? I could have lied. Should have lied. 28. The silence on the other end was deafening. Mom, please tell me you're joking. He's a good person. He's been kind to me. There's nothing... It's not what you're thinking. What am I thinking? Because I'm thinking my 75-year-old mother is being manipulated by someone young enough to be her grandson. I'm thinking I need to come down there and figure out what the hell is going on. Don't! The word came out sharper than I intended. I'm fine. I'm a grown woman who can manage her own life. Can you? Because from where I'm standing, it sounds like you're making decisions that don't make any sense. We argued. Or rather, he lectured and I defended, my voice getting smaller with each accusation. When we finally hung up, him frustrated, me in tears, I sat in the dark living room and felt the weight of the world's judgment settling onto my shoulders. Was I being manipulated? Was I a foolish old woman mistaking kindness for something more? Had I imagined the connection, the warmth, the genuine affection I'd seen in Lucas's eyes? Thursday, I broke down and looked at my phone. 3 text messages from Lucas, spread across the week. I hope you're doing okay. Saw a terrible movie last night. You would have hated it. Wanted to text you the whole time. Still thinking about you. Take all the time you need. I read them over and over, searching for signs of manipulation, of ulterior motives. But all I found was the same gentle honesty that had drawn me to him from the beginning. Friday, I went to book club. I'd considered skipping, but hiding felt like admitting guilt. The moment I walked in, the conversation died. Margaret looked up from her tea with an expression I couldn't quite read. Linda Harrison, who'd known me for 15 years, gave me a smile that was equal parts pity and curiosity. We discussed the book, some literary novel about memory and loss that I hadn't finished. But I could feel the real conversation happening, in glances and silences, in the way they were too careful with their words around me. After the meeting, as I was gathering my coat, Margaret caught my arm. Eleanor, can we talk? Just for a moment. I braced myself for judgment, for warnings about inappropriate behavior and what people were saying. Instead, she said, I owe you an apology. I was gossiping, and that wasn't fair to you. Oh, I hadn't expected that. But I also want to ask you something, friend to friend. Are you happy? The question caught me off guard. Not are you being safe or are you thinking clearly or what are you doing? Just, are you happy? I was, I said softly, before I got scared. Margaret nodded slowly. I was married to Robert for 52 years. We had a wonderful life. But you want to know a secret? For the last decade of his life, we barely spoke. We existed in the same house like friendly strangers. And when he died, I realized I'd wasted 10 years being too comfortable with silence to risk saying what I actually felt. She squeezed my arm gently. I don't know what's happening with you and that young man. Maybe it's exactly what everyone thinks. Maybe it's something else entirely. But if he makes you happy, really happy, then who cares what anyone else thinks? We're too old to waste time on other people's approval, Eleanor. I drove home with her words echoing in my mind, pulled into my driveway and sat in the car as the sun set, painting the sky in shades of amber and rose. My phone buzzed. Lucas, respecting my space but unable to stay completely silent. It's been a week. No pressure. Just wanted you to know I'm still here. I looked at my house. The house where I'd lived with Paul, raised my children, buried my dreams after he died. The house that had been a museum to a life that was over. And I thought about Lucas, about laughter over Chinese food and fixed faucets and the way he looked at me like I was something precious, about feeling seen and heard and alive for the first time in 12 years. I was 75 years old. My son thought I was being manipulated. My daughter would be horrified if she knew the truth. The neighbors were already gossiping. By every conventional measure, this was wrong. But Margaret was right about one thing. I was too old to waste time on other people's approval. I was also too old to waste time being afraid of the one thing that had made me feel like myself again. I picked up my phone and typed, "Can you come over tomorrow? I need to talk to you." His response came immediately. "I'll be there." I sat in my car as darkness fell, my heart pounding with a mixture of terror and exhilaration. I didn't know what I was going to say to him. Didn't know if I was brave enough to choose happiness over security, truth over propriety. But I knew I had to try. Because the worst thing about that week without Lucas wasn't the gossip or the judgment or the family concern. It was the loneliness. And I'd been lonely long enough. He arrived at exactly 2 o'clock on Saturday, punctual as always. I'd been awake since dawn, rehearsing what I wanted to say, discarding scripts, starting over. I'd changed clothes 3 times before settling on a simple blue sweater, the one he'd once said brought out my eyes. Then I'd felt foolish for choosing it for that reason, and almost changed again. When the doorbell rang, my hands were shaking. Lucas stood on my porch looking thinner than I remembered, shadows under his eyes that suggested he'd slept as poorly as I had. He held a small bouquet of daisies, simple, unpretentious, perfect. "Hi," he said softly. "Hi." I stepped back to let him in. "Come in, please." We settled in the living room, the same place we'd spent dozens of afternoons together. But today the air felt different, charged with everything unsaid, heavy with possibility and fear. "I brought these for you." He offered the daisies. "I know they're not fancy, but the woman at the flower shop said they mean innocence and new beginnings. And I thought..." He stopped himself, looking uncertain. "I'm rambling. Sorry. They're beautiful. Thank you." I took them, our fingers brushing, and felt that familiar electricity. "Let me put them in water." In the kitchen, I arranged the flowers with shaking hands, buying myself time. Through the doorway, I could see him sitting on the edge of the couch, hands clasped between his knees, looking young and vulnerable and terrified. When I returned, I sat in the chair across from him, rather than beside him. I needed the distance to say what I had to say. Lucas, this week has been difficult. I know. For me too. My son called. He thinks you're scamming me. My daughter doesn't know the full truth yet, but she will soon. Margaret has been telling everyone in book club. The neighbors are talking. Everyone has an opinion about what I should do with my life. He nodded, jaw tight. "And what do you think you should do?" I took a breath, steadying myself. "I think I've spent the last 12 years being dead. Not physically, but in every way that matters. I wake up, I go through motions, I exist, but I don't live. I haven't lived since Paul died. Eleanor, let me finish. Please." I twisted my hands in my lap. And then you appeared. This beautiful, kind, inexplicable young man who saw me. Not the old lady who needs help crossing the street. Not the widow who lost her purpose, but me. The person I'd forgotten I still was. Tears were building behind my eyes, but I pushed on. "You make me laugh. You listen like what I say actually matters. You fix things in my house and in my heart. You've given me something I thought was gone forever. The feeling that I'm still a person worth knowing, worth caring about, worth loving." The word hung between us, finally spoken aloud. But I'm terrified, Lucas. I'm 75 years old. In 10 years, I'll be 85. If I'm lucky. I'll need more help, more care. My body will fail in ways it hasn't yet. And you'll still be young. You'll be 38, in your prime. And I'll be ancient and declining, and I can't... My voice broke. I can't ask you to sign up for that. He moved then, crossing the space between us, kneeling in front of my chair. He took my hands in his and I let him. You didn't ask. I'm offering. His voice was steady, sure. Eleanor, I know what everyone thinks. I know they see an old woman and a young man and assume the worst. But they don't know what it's like when we're together. They don't know how you challenge me to think deeper, be better. They don't know that you're the first person I think about when I wake up and the last person I think about before I sleep. Lucas, I love you. He said it simply, directly, like it was the most obvious truth in the world. I love your wisdom and your kindness and the way you notice things other people miss. I love your stories about the past and your curiosity about the future. I love the way you look at me like I'm not just some kid, but someone who has something valuable to offer. I love you. Not despite your age, just you. The tears spilled over then. I couldn't stop them. What if it doesn't work? What if you wake up one day and realize you've wasted your youth on someone who can't give you what you need? What if it does work? What if we have 5 good years, or 10 or more? Isn't that worth something? He squeezed my hands. My grandmother used to say that love isn't about guarantees. It's about choosing someone every day for as long as you get. So I'm choosing you. The question is, will you choose me? I looked at him. Really looked at him. At the earnestness in his eyes, the vulnerability in his expression, the love he was offering, without conditions or timelines or promises of forever. And I thought about Margaret's words. We're too old to waste time on other people's approval. I thought about the week I'd just endured, how hollow everything felt without him. I thought about Paul, who'd taught me what real love looked like, who'd want me to be happy, who'd probably be laughing at the absurdity and beauty of this moment. I'm scared, I whispered. Me too. People will judge us. Let them. My family might never understand. Then we'll help them try. I don't know how to do this. How to be us. He smiled then. That beautiful dimpled smile that had undone me from the beginning. Neither do I. But we can figure it out together. One day at a time. I reached out and touched his face. His young, beautiful, beloved face. I love you too. God help me. I do. So you'll give us a chance? I thought about all the reasons to say no. All the practical, sensible, safe reasons to retreat back into my quiet, lonely life. Then I thought about one reason to say yes. I wanted to. Yes. I breathed. Yes. He pulled me into his arms and I let myself sink into the embrace. Let myself feel the joy and terror and impossible rightness of it. We held each other in my living room as the afternoon light streamed through the windows, as the world kept spinning with all its judgments and opinions and expectations. And for the first time in 12 years, I felt completely, devastatingly alive. So what now? I asked against his shoulder. Now? He pulled back to look at me, still smiling. Now we live, together, for however long we get. It wasn't a fairy tale ending. There were still conversations to be had, obstacles to face, people to convince or accept we'd never convince. But it was a beginning, and at 75 years old, I was finally brave enough to begin again. 6 months later, I'm writing this on a Tuesday morning while Lucas sleeps in my guest room. He doesn't live here. Not officially. We agreed that would be too much, too fast, too difficult to explain. But he stays over sometimes, on weekends mostly. And we've fallen into a rhythm that feels less like a relationship and more like a life we're building together, one careful brick at a time. We don't call it dating. We don't have a label that fits neatly into conventional boxes. When people ask, and they do ask, with varying degrees of judgment or curiosity, I tell them the truth. He's important to me. I'm important to him. That's all they need to know. My son came to visit last month. Lucas was here making coffee in the kitchen, completely at ease in my space. I watched my son's face cycle through emotions: confusion, disapproval, reluctant acceptance, as Lucas handed him a mug and started talking about the architecture project he was working on. "Mom, can we talk?" my son asked later, after Lucas had tactfully excused himself to run errands. I braced myself for another lecture. Instead, he said, "I've never seen you smile like this. Not since Dad died. Does that bother you?" He was quiet for a long moment. "It should. By all logic, it should, but it doesn't. You seem happy. Actually happy, and I guess I can't argue with that." It wasn't full approval, but it was something. A beginning. My daughter took longer to come around. She cried when I finally told her the whole truth, said she didn't understand, asked if I was having some kind of crisis. But she also listened when I explained, really explained, what Lucas meant to me. How he'd found me when I was disappearing into loneliness. How he saw me as a person, not just as her mother or someone's grandmother, or a relic of the past. "Just be careful, Mom," she'd said finally. "I don't want you to get hurt." "I'm already hurt," I'd told her gently. "I've been hurt and lonely for 12 years. At least now I'm also happy. The book club has mostly adjusted, though Linda Harrison still gives me looks sometimes. Margaret has become my unlikely champion, shutting down gossip with a sharp word about minding one's own business. Eleanor's got more courage in her little finger than most of us have in our whole bodies. She announced at last month's meeting, and that was the end of it. Lucas's mother met me 3 weeks ago. I was terrified. Surely she'd see me as some predatory old woman corrupting her son. Instead, she hugged me and whispered, "Thank you for making him happy. He's been different since he met you. Lighter." We had dinner together, the 3 of us, and she told stories about Lucas as a boy, while he blushed and protested. Afterward, she pulled me aside and said, "I don't understand this, but I don't need to. He's an adult. He gets to choose his own life. And if that includes you, then I'm glad you're kind. It's not perfect. There are still stares when we're out together. Still whispered comments I pretend not to hear. Still moments when I look in the mirror and see a 75-year-old woman and wonder what he possibly sees in me. But then he'll come up behind me and wrap his arms around my waist and say something that makes me laugh. And I remember. He sees me. Just me. Not my age, or my wrinkles, or my limitations. Me. We've had conversations about the future. The difficult, honest ones that can't be avoided. What happens when I need more care? Whether he wants children someday. How we'll handle it if he meets someone his own age. "I might," he said during one of these talks. "Life is long and unpredictable, and if that happens, we'll deal with it honestly. But right now, in this moment, I choose you, and I'll keep choosing you for as long as it makes sense for both of us. It's not a promise of forever, but it's real and realistic, and somehow that makes it more precious." This morning, I woke up before him and watched him sleep. his face peaceful, one arm flung over the pillow where I'd been lying. I thought about how impossible this all seemed 6 months ago, how terrified I was, how close I came to choosing safety over joy. And I thought about what I'd tell my younger self if I could go back. I'd tell her that love doesn't come with an expiration date or an age limit, that dignity isn't about following rules. It's about being true to yourself. That the only wasted life is one lived in fear of what others might think. I'd tell her to be brave, to take the hand that's offered, to say yes when everything in you wants to say no. He stirred then, opened his eyes, smiled that sleepy smile that still makes my heart skip. Morning, he mumbled. What are you thinking about? You, us, how lucky I am. We're lucky, he corrected, pulling me close. We found each other when we both needed finding. We have breakfast together, toast and coffee, and the newspaper spread between us. We make plans for the week. He tells me about a deadline at work. I tell him about the book I'm reading. Ordinary things, beautiful things. I don't know how long this will last. Maybe months, maybe years. Maybe one of us will change. We'll need something different. We'll have to make a difficult choice. But I know this. Right now, in this moment, I am loved. I am seen. I am alive in a way I thought I'd never be again. At 75 years old, I've learned the most important lesson. It's never too late to open your heart. It's never too late to choose joy. It's never too late to let someone love you, even if that someone is unexpected, unconventional, impossible by the world's standards. Love doesn't arrive with an instruction manual. It doesn't check your age or ask permission or make sense to anyone but the people living it. It just arrives. And when it does, whether you're 25 or 75, you have a choice. Open the door or keep it closed. I opened mine, and on the other side was a young man with dimples and kind eyes, and a heart big enough to see past all the reasons we shouldn't work. People ask me sometimes if I'm afraid of what happens next. Of course I am. Fear doesn't disappear just because you choose bravery. But I'm also not willing to give up the happiness I have right now because of fears about a future I can't control. So we live, day by day, moment by moment, building something that belongs only to us. And when I look at Lucas across my kitchen table, reading the sports section and stealing bites of my toast, I know one thing with absolute certainty. This love, strange and beautiful and defiant and true, is the best choice I ever made. Even if the world never understands, even if it ends tomorrow, even if all I get is this one perfect, impossible, precious moment, it's enough. We are enough, and I am finally, completely, gratefully alive.